Chapter 363. The next day, waking up from his sleep, the memories of last night suddenly surged into Noah's mind, causing Noah to be invigorated. The sleepiness in his body instantly disappeared without a trace. Hurriedly opening his eyes, Noah fiercely turned his head and looked to his side. Huff! Huff! In Noah's arms, Lisanna and Noah were covered under the same quilt. Her head was pillowed on Noah's arm, and her hands were tightly wrapped around Noah's neck. Her beautiful face was still slightly rosy, and there was still a teardrop hanging from the corner of her eyes. However, her expression was extremely peaceful, and she slept very soundly. Only Noah, who was tightly stuck to Lisanna, knew that under the quilt, not only Lisanna, but even he was in a state of being completely naked. Feeling the breathing of Lisanna in his arms, at this moment, Noah's heart did not have any ripples, only infinite pity. Because, for the entire night, the girl in his arms had been sacrificing herself and was tormented by Noah for the entire night. Presumably, this girl must be exhausted now. She won't wake up until noon, or even at night, right? Rest well. Noah patted Lisanna's head in his arms with extreme pity, and then left a light kiss on Lisanna's smooth forehead. Then, he tiptoed out of the quilt, picked up the clothes on the ground, and put them on neatly. Ugh! It was not known if it was because the loss of Noah's body temperature made Lisanna feel a little lost in her dream. Lisanna turned over, and her fair skin was exposed from the quilt that had slipped off, exposed to the air, while she murmured in her sleep. Big brother Noah. Seeing this, Noah smiled knowingly and covered Lisanna's body with the quilt again. Then, he picked up the clothes that belonged to Lisanna on the ground and hung them on the clothes rack at the side. Then, he glanced at Lisanna's sleeping face and quietly walked out of the room. Katja, accompanied by the extremely soft sound of the door closing, the room that was covered in pink for the entire night returned to its usual silence and warmth. Only the sound of Lisanna's breathing was left, constantly lingering. Yo! Noah! Are you up? Noah! It's been a long time since I saw you come down from upstairs. But you woke up a lot later than usual today. Don't tell me you're still lazing around in bed at this age. Ahahaha. Shoo shoo. Do you think Noah is that brat from your family? That's right. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. As soon as Noah walked down the stairs, the guild members noticed him. While they greeted him, they also made fun of each other. As a result, the bar on the first floor of the guild was as noisy as ever. Against the noise, Noah smiled helplessly, but at the same time, he was in a good mood. He responded to them one by one and blended in with the people around him, appearing to be very harmonious. After all, in this place, Noah was not the chairman of a guild that had taken in a bunch of children with power, nor was he an exception in some school, nor was he an outsider magician who had barged into someone else's territory in search of something. Here, Noah was just a member of Fairy Tale. At best, he was the grandson of the chairman. There was nothing special about him. Of course, if there was anything special about him, Noah was also very special. Other things aside, the fact that Noah could live directly in the guild was already very special. Moreover, after a day, even the new members of Fairy Tale who had just joined in the past 2 years had all heard about Noah from the old members. They knew that not only did Noah have the same magic as the strongest magic shooter in the guild, but he had also gone to the guild's holy land 2 years ago to receive guidance from the first chairman who was said to have turned into a ghost. Many people were guessing. After 2 years, Noah, along with Alusha and Mira, had always been far ahead of the rest of his companions. Among the companions of his generation, he could be said to be the strongest. Now, what level of strength did he have? Was it the same as before? Was it the same as Alusha, who was now the strongest female magic shooter in Fairy Tale? Or was it the same as Mira? Keeping a low profile and not using the identity of a magic shooter to improve himself? This was something that everyone was extremely curious about. Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, Hubby, and others had already seen the tip of the iceberg of Noah's strength. They knew that Noah had been constantly improving himself in the past 2 years, and his strength had become unfathomable. In addition to knowing this, even Alusha and the others did not know how strong Noah really was. Probably, only Makarov more or less had some guesses after yesterday's conversation, right? In short, now, all the magic shooters in Fairy Tale were looking forward to seeing Noah's strength. Good morning. Mira, who was carrying a tray and serving drinks to the guild members, turned around and looked at Noah, who came down from upstairs with a smile. Are you hungry? I'll prepare breakfast for you. How would it feel to see a popular masked girl greet him with a gentle smile when he woke up early in the morning? Other men would probably howl endlessly for this, and Noah might also be shaken. But when he thought of eating up the sister of the popular model last night, and now lying in his room sleeping, Noah felt uncomfortable for a while. No need. At that moment, Noah smiled and shook his head. I'm not very hungry yet. Even if you're not very hungry, you still have to eat breakfast. Mira came directly in front of Noah, raised her head, and her gentle eyes met Noah's gaze. Like a newlywed wife, she reached out and helped Noah straighten his collar. Otherwise, it's not good for your health. Yes. Noah could only stiffen his body and let Mira do as she pleased. It couldn't be helped. Apart from his relationship with Lisanna, Mira had changed too much, and Noah still hadn't completely gotten used to her gentleness. Coupled with his conversation with Lisanna last night, Noah found out about Mira's feelings for him, so it was normal for him to be a little unsure of how to react. But now that he consciously paid attention to Mira, Noah realized that Mira was really different from how she treated him and others. This could be seen from the envious and jealous gazes that were constantly cast at him when Mira was tidying up his collar. So Mira really does have that kind of feeling for Noah. No wonder Mira changed so much when Noah just left. I thought that after 2 years, Mira would no longer have that kind of feeling. Damn that Noah, I'm so envious. The guild, which had been very noisy until just a moment ago, returned to silence in an instant. Then, all kinds of pitch-black resentment emitted from the bodies of the members of the guild, mixed with all kinds of fragmentary chatter. It was chilling. In the crowd, Lucy, who saw this scene, was also extremely surprised and let out a puzzled cry. The person that Miss Mira likes is Noah. Ha! The naked Gray glanced at Lucy from the corner of his eyes. That's something that everyone knows, isn't it? As soon as he said this, Alusha and Naz at the side turned to Gray in disbelief. So the person that Mira likes is Noah. Why does Mira like Noah? Is Noah more delicious than fire? Alright, I was wrong. Gray face-bombed. Although she has never admitted it, the person that Mira likes should be Noah. Everyone in the guild knows that. Those men even plan to wait for Noah to come back to teach Noah a lesson. On the table, Habe held a fish and casually said to Gray while biting into it. By the way, Gray, is it really okay for you to be naked? Oh. Gray seemed to have just realized that he was naked and was shocked. Lucy was speechless. On the other side, Noah, who could only be manipulated by Mira, suddenly frowned and reached out to grab Mira's hand that was moving on his collar. Mira looked at Noah in a daze. However, Noah did not pay attention to Mira. Instead, he pressed Mira's hand down, took a step forward, and looked at the entrance of the guild. There, a few figures slowly appeared and walked towards the guild, one step at a time. Chapter 364. Following a series of rhythmic footsteps, the noises in the Fairy Tale Guild quieted down as if they could feel the oppressive atmosphere in the air. Noah held Mira's hand and took a step forward as if he wanted to protect Mira behind him. His gaze was fixated on the direction of the guild's entrance. Therefore, Noah didn't notice that Mira first glanced at the hand Noah was holding, then at the back of Noah who was standing in front of her. A blush appeared on her face, and for a moment, she even revealed a blissful expression. For Mira, it was obvious that looking at Noah's back was more attractive than looking at the abnormal situation in front of the guild's entrance. Except for Mira, everyone in the guild quietened down and looked at the entrance. Alusha, Naz, Gray, and the others looked at the entrance with a dignified expression. Habi hid behind Naz while trembling with fear. Only Lucy looked around in confusion. She was subconsciously affected by the atmosphere and held her breath. Under such circumstances, a small team appeared in front of everyone in the guild. The moment she saw the leader of this team, Lucy finally understood why everyone in the guild was behaving like this. Although she had only met him once, Lucy knew that this person was definitely out of place in the harmonious atmosphere of the guild. There were a total of 4 people. Among them, one of them wore a fur collar coat and walked in front. The other 3 were like guards, following behind him. It was Lax's and Thor's order. Lax's, who led Thor's order into the guild, seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head and looked forward. When he saw Noah standing in front of Mira, his eyes suddenly narrowed. The originally oppressive aura around him turned into a terrifying pressure. Lax's. Freed, Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin didn't seem to have expected that Lax's would suddenly release such an aura. They were stunned for a moment. When they saw Noah in the guild, they were shocked and immediately understood. Only Lax's personal guards, Thor's order, knew what kind of obsession Lax's had with Noah in his heart. For Lax's, Noah occupied a large position in his heart. A strong competitor. A person who may cause hindrance. An enemy who has the ability to pose a threat. An existence that must be defeated. Each of these identities made Noah the biggest demon in Lax's heart. In addition, Makarov had always disagreed with his philosophy, but valued Noah. It was imaginable how much of an eyesore Noah was to Lax's. On the other side, Noah fully activated his sensory ability, and included Lax's in the range of his sensory ability. Noah could clearly feel that compared to 2 years ago, Lax's magic had improved by leaps and bounds. In other words, Lax's had also become stronger and more dangerous than 2 years ago. Makarov's worry was indeed necessary. For now, Lax's might really have the power of a 10th saint, which was enough to rival Makarov. If Lax's planned to do something, then Makarov might not be able to stop Lax's. However, compared to the great improvement in his strength, Lax's had also become more dangerous than before. The violent aura that was constantly rolling around his body and the wild nature of a wild beast that was about to break out of its cage were all telling Noah that he was not going to let go of this opportunity. Lax's might have reached the limit of his patience and was about to do something wrong. For no reason, Noah had such an intuition. This caused Noah to narrow his eyes, and his body gradually relaxed. He glanced at the Thunder God clan, who were standing behind Rax's and looking at him with vigilant expressions. He curled his lips into a smile and turned his head to look at Mira. "Didn't you want to prepare breakfast for me?" Mira blinked her beautiful big eyes and smiled sweetly. "Okay, please wait a moment." Leaving this sentence, Mira turned around and walked in the direction of the bar. It was also at this moment that a bolt of lightning, like a thunderbolt, flashed through the space and appeared in front of Noah. The next moment, a fist flashing with lightning suddenly appeared, bringing along a burst of crackling sound and a sharp sonic boom, fiercely falling on Noah's head. Bang! In the midst of a muffled sound, a burst of lightning and a strong impact wind with Noah as the center suddenly shook the surroundings. Not only did the surrounding tables and chairs all fly away, but it also blew away all the guild members who were closer, causing them to cry out in pain. "Noah!" Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, and the others exclaimed. Even Mira, who walked into the bar, covered her mouth with her eyes full of worry. Unfortunately, everyone's worries were superfluous. When the impact wind dissipated, the situation at the center of the impact was also exposed to everyone's eyes. They saw that Laxus, who was wearing a fur collar coat, had appeared in front of Noah without anyone noticing. His fist, which was mixed with lightning, was still swinging forward and landed on one of Noah's arms. That was Noah's hand. Raising one hand in front of himself, Noah easily blocked Laxus's powerful blow with his wrist. A faint white light flowed on his wrist, and it shattered the lightning on Laxus's fist that was on his wrist into sparks. Glancing at the fist on his arm, Noah raised his eyes and looked at Laxus, who was looking at him with a gloomy face, and suddenly smiled. "Is this your way of greeting?" "It's a little different." Laxus showed an arrogant smile, but there was no smile in his eyes. "This is just teaching you how to respect your brother that you haven't seen for a long time." "As expected of you," Noah said lightly. "But I'm not surprised. In that head of yours, waving your fist is the best solution to solve problems, right?" "Oh." Laxus's eyes became cold. "I haven't seen you for 2 years, and your mouth has become more eloquent. I just don't know how strong you are." "What? Are you interested?" Facing the cold light in Laxus's eyes, Noah suddenly smiled, but along with the smile, there was also a suffocating and terrifying aura. "I don't mind accompanying you, but I don't have the confidence to hold back." Feeling the terrifying aura coming from Noah, Laxus's face slowly became dignified. Laxus, Freed, Bikesrow, Abarge, and Jerlin also opened their eyes wide and began to feel anxious. Originally, Thor Group thought that after 2 years, with Laxus's growth, he would definitely not lose to Noah. But now, it seems that Noah's growth is not inferior to Laxus's, and may even surpass him. Could it be that Laxus is no longer Noah's opponent? Thinking of this, Thor Group, who knew how obsessed Laxus was with Noah, was worried. Alusha, Mira, and the others looked at Noah in surprise, as if they did not expect Noah to be so aggressive. Only Naz had a look of excitement on his face, as if he could not wait to join in. Isn't this growing in a good direction? Instead, it was Raxus who laughed maniacally at the same time as he became serious. 2 years ago, you were just a little brat with empty power, but now you have a good domineering aura. Very good, now you are qualified to be my younger brother, now I have the value of defeating you. After saying this, the magic power in Laxus's body rose little by little. Beep, beep, beep. A dazzling arc of electricity flashed from Laxus's body, wrapping Laxus's whole body. Laxus stared straight at Noah with a hint of madness in his eyes. Lightning flashed all over his body as Laxus stared at Noah. "Let's go outside." Hearing this, everyone present understood Laxus's meaning. A battle invitation. It was a challenge from one of the strongest substitutes from Fairy Tale. A battle invitation from Laxus, who already had the power of the 10 saints, and was most likely second only to Makarov and Kildas in the guild. And to this battle invitation, Noah only responded with a calm face. "Don't think that I will hold back." Chapter 365. Don't think that I'll hold back. Noah's words completely ignited the oppressive atmosphere in Fairy Tale. Looking at the two brothers confronting each other in the middle of the field, many guild members swallowed their saliva. Even Alusha, Mira, and the others couldn't help but hold their breaths. Laxus could be said to be an outlier in Fairy Tale. In Fairy Tale, Raxus had never had a close relationship with anyone other than the members of Thor's order. In fact, he had even made enemies with almost every single one of them. He was an existence that many people in Fairy Tale hated. Although they said so, no one in Fairy Tale would deny Laxus's strength. In Fairy Tale, there were currently a total of 5 S-rank sorcerers in the guild. Other than Kildas, who was recognized as the strongest, and Mira, who hadn't been active as a magic shooter for 2 years, Laxus, Alusha, and the remaining S-rank magic shooter were known as the three strongest candidates in fairy tale. It meant that they could replace Kildas at any time. However, even though they were all S-rank magic shooters, the gap between them was still very big. Just like Lax's. Based on the strength of Lax's perception ability, Noah could sense that Lax's definitely had the strength to be rated as one of the 10 great saint magic shooters. Another example was Kildas. Even Makarov admitted that he didn't know if he could suppress him. It could be imagined that Kildas was definitely at the level of a 10 great saint. However, the so-called 10 great saint magic shooters were only chosen by the people of the council. They believed that they were the strongest, most famous, and most upright magic shooters in the continent. Among the 10 great saint magic shooters, there were those who weren't good at fighting, and those who were good at fighting. And of course, these 10 great saint magic shooters who were good at fighting were far stronger than ordinary S-rank magic shooters. Although Kildas and Lax's were both S-rank magic shooters, regardless of reputation or conduct, they weren't recognized by the council. Naturally, they weren't able to obtain the title of one of the 10 great saint magic shooters. However, from Noah's point of view, in terms of strength, Kildas and Lax's undoubtedly had the ability to become one of the 10 great saint magic shooters. Even among the 10 great saint magic shooters, the difference in strength between the number 1 and number 10 was like the difference between heaven and earth. How could there not be a difference between S-rank magic shooters? If Lax's had the strength to be ranked one of the 10 great saint magic shooters, even if he himself was an S-rank magic shooters wouldn't be a match for him. Of course, the ordinary members of the guild didn't know about this yet. However, as far as they knew, Raxus had already become an S-rank magic shooter 7 years ago. Now, 7 years later, his strength was even more terrifying. Could Noah defeat Laxus? Just as Mira, who was a little worried, was about to say something to stop this duel, Noah suddenly changed the topic in the arena. That's true, but let's forget about it for today. With that, Noah immediately retracted his hand that blocked Laxus's fist. The mana and aura on his body instantly vanished without a trace. He was just like an ordinary person, weak and powerless. The onlookers who did not expect Noah, who had been so aggressive, to suddenly stop were stunned. Raxus was even more furious, as if he had been insulted. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, the electric arcs that flashed on Laxus's body became even more violent. Are you trying to escape? The furious Laxus growled at Noah. Do you think I'll allow that? Hearing that, Noah still didn't use any mana. He turned his head and looked at Laxus with a mocking gaze. Seems like I've overestimated you, Laxus. Don't you have the ability to pay attention to your surroundings? Hearing that, Laxus was startled at first, then his expression changed. He suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction of the second floor. On the second floor's railing, Makarov sat there and looked downwards with a gloomy face. Everyone could feel the anger that permeated around him. 2 years have passed, Laxus. You've indeed become stronger, but your naivety hasn't improved with your age, Noah said sympathetically. Once you're in a battle, you only have eyes for your opponent, but you ignore the possibility of enemies around you. Once you have someone to pay attention to, you will ignore the people around you. Just like how you blindly worship strength, but you don't pay attention to the things that are more important than strength. Laxus, you're the older brother, don't let me, the younger brother, lecture you. Laxus's body trembled as he stared at Noah with bloodshot eyes. But, what could Laxus say? Although they were in a battle, although they were in his own guild, Laxus didn't notice anything that could possibly affect the battle. Since Makarov appeared here, it was impossible for him to watch the two brothers fight. Therefore, Noah, who first noticed Makarov's appearance, decisively stopped. Compared to Noah, not only did he not notice Makarov's appearance, but he also yelled at Noah because of it. He was like a stray dog. How could he lose by just 1 or 2 rounds? Even if they didn't fight, Noah had already proven himself. He had proven that he was better than Laxus. The truth was right in front of him. What could Laxus say? But this fact made Laxus's anger completely erupt. "Are you going to stop me again, old man?" Driven by anger, Laxus roared at Makarov's direction. "Do you think you can still stop me now?" Makarov closed his eyes, and after a while, he suddenly opened them, his old eyes flashing. "You've all grown up, I really can't control you. If that's the case, then get out of my way." Laxus shouted without hesitation and pointed at Noah. "I must prove that I'm the strongest in this guild. Do you still know that you're a member of this guild?" Makarov roared. "Even if I, as your grandfather, can't stop you, as the guild leader, I won't watch the members of the guild fight. Laxus, don't challenge my bottom line." Laxus clenched his fists and stared at Noah, his eyes filled with madness and anger, as well as a strong sense of unwillingness. If it was any other place, Laxus would have attacked without hesitation. But this was Fairy Tale, the guild that Laxus valued. Just as Noah thought, Laxus had always valued Fairy Tale, but because of some influence when he was young, Laxus was just like Noah said, a naive person, a child who would never grow up. Who would know that Laxus worshipped strength to prove that he wasn't just the grandson of one of the 10 saint magicians, Makarov, but that he relied on his own hard work? Who would know that Laxus only wanted to strengthen Fairy Tale, but his thoughts were twisted, and he felt that the existence of weaklings would endanger the reputation of Fairy Tale. Aside from Noah, even Laxus himself didn't realize all of this. But it was undeniable that Laxus valued Fairy Tale very much. Thus, the crackling of electricity on Laxus' body gradually weakened. Taking a deep breath, Laxus forced himself to calm down. He raised his malicious eyes and looked at Noah. "One day, I will prove that no matter if it's you, that old man, Mishgang, Alusha, or even that pretentious demon, I will not lose to any of you. I am the strongest." Leaving these words, Laxus turned around without hesitation and walked out of the guild. Laxus, Freed, Bikesrow, and Albarge glared fiercely at Noah, and then hurriedly followed behind Laxus and left the guild. Looking at the backs of Laxus and the 4 members of the Thunder God's Council, everyone in the guild was silent for a long time. Chapter 366. A heavy atmosphere filled the air of the Fairy Tale Guild. Because of the appearance of Laxus, the joy that had always filled the Fairy Tale Guild had disappeared without a trace. What was left was only depression. When they thought that there was a terrifyingly strong person like Laxus who had always been at odds with everyone in Fairy Tale, no matter who it was, they would feel depressed. Even if it was Noah. Noah was not afraid of Laxus' provocation or challenge. To be honest, from Noah's point of view, Laxus was like a rebellious child. The lessons of adults would only stimulate the rebellious heart in his heart, so the best way was to scare him and wake him up. Otherwise, he really didn't know how long it would take for Laxus to wake up. However, Noah still had to consider Makarov's feelings. As an old man, the thing that Makarov didn't want to see the most was the killing of his own flesh and blood. Moreover, it was his 2 beloved grandsons who were killing each other. If it wasn't because of this consideration, not to mention the guild leader coming out to stop it, with Noah's current strength, even if the Emperor came, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to stop Noah. However, meeting with Laxus again made Noah certain in his heart. Laxus definitely wouldn't wake up naturally. If he didn't want Laxus to do something that would make Makarov worried and sad, then Noah felt that he had to think of a way. Woo 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 woo. Just when everyone in the guild fell into a stifling silence, suddenly, Naz seemed to have thought of something. He held his head and suddenly shouted, scaring everyone. Before anyone in the guild could ask for the reason, Naz cried out. "I actually forgot to fight with Laxus." As soon as these words came out, many people fell to the ground in a burst of crackling sounds. "Are you an idiot?" Gray roared at Naz. You actually want to challenge Laxus at this time? Did you eat too much fire and burn your head off? What did you say? Naz was also angry. Okay, Naz, Gray, don't quarrel at this time. Lucy had a sad face and hurriedly tried to persuade them. This is a very bad situation, very bad. Don't worry about the two of them. Alusha sighed. They can even quarrel at this time. I can't stand them. Noah smiled, but there was some admiration in his eyes when he looked at Naz, who was fighting with Gray. As expected of the dragon's son, Shifeng's charisma was extraordinary. With just a few words, he dispelled the oppressive atmosphere in the guild, and everyone returned to normal. Was this the so-called charisma of a person? Naz was really an incredible person. Are you okay? Mira, who was staying at the bar, also came out and held up the hand that Noah used to block Laxus's attack, and said with some concern. You shouldn't be hurt, right? I'm fine. Noah gave Mira a reassuring smile. It's just an obvious attack that can't be more obvious. It's not enough to hurt me. Besides, Laxus hasn't shown his true ability yet. If he wants to hurt me, he won't be qualified if he doesn't use an attack that's 10 times stronger than the one just now. As expected of you. Alusha said with admiration. In the guild, you're the only one who can suppress Laxus. Didn't Laxus just say that he won't admit defeat, including you? Noah shrugged. No matter what, you are still the strongest female magic shooter in Fairy Tale. Don't admit defeat so easily. Everyone is so powerful. On the side, Lucy said enviously. Alusha and that Laxus are both S-grade magic shooters. Although Noah isn't an S-grade magic shooter, he definitely won't lose to that Laxus, that Mishgang, and that Kildas. Fairy Tale really has a lot of powerful people. At this point, Lucy suddenly said doubtfully. But, Laxus just mentioned a pretentious magic person. Who is that? Hearing this, everyone around them all quieted down. Mira was originally full of smiles, but after hearing Lucy's words, she suddenly covered her face and cried bitterly. Miss Mira. Lucy was shocked. That guy Laxus, isn't it too much to say that? In the past, Alyssa would quarrel with Mira every day. It would be abnormal if they didn't start a fight within 3 days. Now, she seemed to have let go of her previous grudges with the gentler Mira. She even stood up for Mira. You actually said that someone is pretentious. There should be a limit to how much you can say without thinking. Lucy was stunned for a moment, and then without any suspense, cried out in surprise. She looked at Mira in disbelief, who was covering her face and crying bitterly. Don't tell me that pretentious magic person is Miss Mira. Whoa. Mira started to cry even more miserably. That. Miss Mira. Lucy was at a loss and did not seem to know what to do. She could only look at Noah, who had a bitter smile on his face, for help. Noah, quickly help me coax Miss Mira. You guys. Noah could only step forward, reach out his hand, and gently pat Mira's head. All right, stop crying, Mira. It doesn't matter if you're the violent Mira or the gentle Mira, you're still the Mira I know. No matter what others think of you, I know you. I know the true gentleness in your heart. Hearing this, Mira finally stopped crying. She raised her head and looked pitifully at Noah with teary eyes. Then which one do you like? Once this was said, the whole place fell silent again. In the guild, all the male members stared at Noah with hateful eyes, as if they wanted to kill Noah with their gazes. On the other hand, the female members looked at all of this with a mocking expression, as if they were watching a good show. This made Noah's face stiffen. Noah. As a good brother who loved his sister, Elfman raised his sandbag-sized fist and shouted. If you're a man, you can't back down now. Noah scolded in his heart. Wasn't this adding fuel to the fire? Seeing that Mira was pouting and looking like she would cry at any time, Noah could only brace himself and do it. No matter which Mira. I like both of them, ah. The female members of the guild screamed as if they felt that it was mushy. Oh. The male members of the guild screamed in despair as if they were big bosses that had been defeated. Myra's cheeks turned red, and she finally smiled through her tears. Thank you, I'm so happy. As she said this, Mira stepped forward and put her mouth next to Noah's ear. Since you've confessed, I won't pursue the matter with Lisanna. This sentence was like a bolt from the blue, and Noah was stunned. Mira, so you knew? No. If he thought about it carefully, it would be strange if you didn't know. After all, Mira and Lisanna were sisters, and they lived together. Last night, Noah and Lisanna were affectionate for the entire night, and Lisanna didn't return home. How could Mira, who lived with Lisanna, not know? Moreover, Noah had just returned yesterday, and Mira only needed to think for a moment to know that Lisanna didn't return home and stayed at Noah's place. Then, there was no then. Just like Lisanna knew her sister's feelings best, Mira definitely knew her sister's feelings. Under such circumstances, how could she not know why Lisanna stayed out all night with Noah? In other words, this matter had been exposed from the start. Don't make Lisanna sad, Mira said softly as she tiptoed. Also, don't make me sad. With that, Mira turned her head, and before Noah could react, she kissed Noah in front of all the guild members. Ah! Seeing this scene, the female members of the guild screamed again. Oh! On the other hand, the male members once again let out miserable howls. Many of them even fell to the ground, unable to move. Holding his cheek, Noah looked at Mira, who was smiling gently at him, and his head became dizzy. What does this mean? Is he really allowing me to have both sisters? This is a free lunch. Chapter 367. As a result, Noah was teased by those who were familiar with him and those who were unfamiliar with him for a whole day because he had confessed to Mira in front of everyone in the guild. Mira seemed to have fallen into the same predicament as Noah, but the ones who teased Mira were only the female magic shooters of the guild. Although the male magic shooters also surrounded Mira, they used various ways to say bad things about Noah, as if they were advising Mira not to be deceived. In this regard, Mira treated people with a gentle smile that could melt people all day long. Whether it was the male magic shooters who splashed dirty water on Noah or the female magic shooters who made fun of her, she always smiled without saying anything, as if she enjoyed this feeling very much. Under such circumstances, Noah simply retreated. Originally, Noah wanted to see if he should accept some commissions today and go out to work, but after Mira and Laxas made such a fuss, he lost all interest. Thus, today, Noah's 3 meals were prepared in advance by the gentle Mira, and it seemed that Mira even paid the bill in advance, which made many of his companions tease Noah again, saying that he was living off a woman. But it couldn't be helped, who asked Noah's savings in this world to be basically used up in the past 4 years of cultivation, and now he didn't even have a penny left. Although in the guild, even if one didn't have money, they could still eat on credit, and the guild wouldn't let the members here starve, but there shouldn't be anyone who would be willing to eat on credit, right? At least, Noah couldn't stand it. This made Noah secretly sigh in his heart. Except in the world of absolute dual blades, Noah's first worry in every world was how to make money, and it was the same when he returned to his own home. This was really crazy. It seemed that no matter what, he would have to go out to work tomorrow. With this thought in mind, Noah endured the teasing of the guild members for a whole day. But Noah didn't know that this plan of his was destined to be unable to be realized. When the sun went down, Mira came to Noah's room. Looking at Lisanna, who was sleeping soundly on Noah's bed, Mira rolled her eyes at the embarrassed Noah. Then, she came to the bedside and pushed Lysana's delicate body. "Lysana, wake up." "Ugh." Perhaps it was because of Myra's voice, but Lysana still thought that she was sleeping in her own bed. She turned over and mumbled in her sleep. "Sister Mira, I'm very tired today. I don't want to go to the guild. Please, let me sleep for a while more." Tired? Why was he tired? As long as one wasn't muddle-headed, it wouldn't be difficult to guess based on the current situation, right? This caused Noah's expression to become even more awkward. At the same time, it also caused Mira to reveal a somewhat angry expression. She placed her hands on her waist and angrily said to Noah, "I thought that if it was Noah, he would definitely be very gentle to girls. It seems that I was wrong." Noah didn't know how to respond. In fact, the reason Lysana became like this wasn't because Noah didn't care about the girl's body for his own comfort. Most of the blame lay with Lysana. Perhaps it was because she had suppressed her feelings for Noah for too long and had suddenly burst out, or because she knew that Noah had been confessed to by another girl, but last night, Lysana had unexpectedly taken the initiative. That passion was something that even Noah couldn't take. Of course, it wasn't his body that couldn't take it, but his mind. That was why Lysana's boundless passion last night didn't just make Noah feel good, it also made her feel satisfied and exhausted. Hence, Lysana had to bear at least 70% of the blame for this. However, Noah wouldn't push all the blame away because of this. Even if it was because of Lysana's initiative, the one who tormented Lysana like this was him. He wouldn't refute. Besides, Lysana had already given everything to Noah. Couldn't Noah bear the scolding of his sister? That wasn't what Noah would do. "What should we do now?" Mira was a little distressed. "Lysana hasn't been home for a night. We can't let her spend the night outside. Otherwise, Elfman will definitely be worried. I think it's better not to wake Lysana up," Noah said weakly. "I can send Lysana back." "Is that so?" Mira tilted her head and made a cute expression. Then, she said helplessly, "That's the only way." After saying that, Mira went to the clothes rack and took down all of Lysana's clothes. She turned around and sat on the bed. Her beautiful eyes glanced at Noah and her cheeks puffed up. Looking at a girl changing clothes isn't something Noah would do. Hearing that, Noah could only bitterly smile and turn around. He couldn't help but feel sad. At this time, "What part of your sister haven't I seen? I've touched her all over." This sentence could only be said in Noah's heart. He couldn't say it out loud. After all, Noah's sharp senses could still feel the displeasure in Myra's heart. Whether it was because her sweetheart had the most intimate relationship with a girl other than herself, or because her most beloved sister's body was taken away by someone else, it was obvious that Mira wasn't as indifferent as she looked on the surface. She just couldn't make things difficult for him. Like Lysana, Mira was actually very conflicted in her heart. The person her most beloved sister liked was her sweetheart. Mira, who didn't want to see her sister sad, could only choose to give up or be like Lysana and choose to ignore and escape. Mira and Lysana, as sisters, only had one thing in mind. That was, they didn't want to be sad, and they didn't want their closest sister to be sad. So, both of them subconsciously avoided making a choice and threw Noah a sentence that best expressed their feelings. "Don't make us sad." That was all. As for sharing a husband with her sister, perhaps the two girls already had a certain level of awareness in their hearts. It was just that they were still in the stage of accepting it. Noah, Mira, and Lysana didn't know what the final outcome would be. They could only let nature take its course. When Noah carried the sleeping Lysana on his back and walked out of the guild with Mira, the sky was already completely dark. "Seems like we've wasted a lot of time." Mira looked at the sky and said worriedly with one hand on her face. "I wonder if Elfman has eaten properly." Looking at Mira, who was sincerely worried about her brother and sister, Noah realized that as long as he was with Mira, his heart would be touched all the time. The gentle Mira in front of him had changed into this because of him. While Mira was able to express her gentleness and cuteness with every action, her concern for her family remained unchanged. Just like Noah said, Mira was gentle from start to finish. She could become a violent girl to protect her brother and sister, but she could also become impeccably gentle because of a single sentence from her sweetheart. That was enough to prove that there was a gentleness in her heart that outsiders couldn't detect. It was precisely because of this gentleness that came from the bottom of her heart that Mira was able to completely transform herself in just 2 short years. This was because Mira had always had a gentleness hidden in the depths of her heart. But now, that gentleness was no longer hidden. It was all on the surface. It was also because of this that Mira was able to affect Noah's heart all the time like she was now. Elfman is no longer a child, Noah said to Mira with a smile as he hid this feeling in his heart. I believe that he will take good care of himself. Ha! Mira smiled gently. That's true. Just like that, the two of them took the sleeping Lisanna away from the guild and walked to the other side of the street. At that moment, Noah, who was chatting with Mira, felt something strange. Whoosh! An extremely soft sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. At this moment, a bad premonition rose in Noah's heart, causing him to stop in his tracks. Mira stopped as well and asked in confusion. What's wrong? Noah didn't say anything and instead released his sensory ability. The feedback from his sensory ability caused Noah's pupils to shrink bit by bit. Chapter 368. Shio. As Noah expanded his sensing ability, the faint sound of something breaking through the air suddenly became sharp. Hearing the sound of something breaking through the air, Noah's first thought was, there's an attack. However, this attack was clearly not directed at Noah. Otherwise, Noah's sensitivity towards danger would not have allowed him to not sense it until now. Furthermore, the attack did not come in Noah's direction. Instead, it came from quite a distance away. It was because of this that Noah was a little slow to react. However, even though he was slow to react, Noah's heart still had a bad premonition. Coupled with the feedback from his sensing ability, Noah's heart trembled. He quickly turned around and looked at the end of the street. Over there, the guild building belonging to Fairy Tale stood tall under the moonlight. Around the Fairy Tale guild building, iron rods that were thicker than pillars cut through the air. They flashed through the night sky and landed on top of the guild building with a sharp whistling sound. Pang 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 pang. Amidst a series of dull thuds, the thick iron rods from all directions smashed into the Fairy Tale guild building and stabbed into it, causing pieces of wood to shatter and fall to the ground with a crackling sound. It was only a matter of a moment. In that moment, the guild that was established during the era of the first guild leader of Fairy Tale, under the attack of the iron rods, turned into ruins. Gotcha! The guild sign with the words, Fairy Tale, on it cracked open with a crisp sound. It was as if it had been smashed, and half of it was shattered. About 200 to 300 meters away from the guild building of Fairy Tale, Noah watched all of this happen with a buzzing sound in his head. His mind went blank. Was it destroyed? Fairy Tale was destroyed. Everyone's guild was destroyed. His home was destroyed just like that. Liar. Beside Noah, Mira, who also saw all of this with her own eyes, covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, and even her delicate body was trembling. Our guild, due to the distance, Fairy Tale's guild building was only the size of a palm in the eyes of Noah and Mira. However, this palm-sized guild building was turned into a dilapidated building in an instant. Mira could clearly see the thick iron rods that were inserted into the palm-sized guild. Although there was no way to confirm the exact damage of the guild building, but looking at the shape of a hedgehog, it was most likely that the guild building was already full of holes. Pang! Just as Mira was staring blankly at everything, there was an explosion beside her. A burst of magic power that was as violent as a hurricane suddenly surged out like a wave of stormy wind. Mira was startled awake and instinctively looked at her surroundings. She saw that Noah, who was carrying Lisanna on his back, had his head lowered. A terrifying magic storm expanded from his body like a volcanic eruption and spread in all directions. It seemed to be deliberately avoiding Mira and Lisanna, bypassing the two girls and spreading in all directions. That magic was so terrifying that even Mira's heart violently shrank. Of course, this was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that, along with the monstrous magic, there was also a terrifying aura that even Laxus could only look at from behind, and a murderous aura that could frighten ordinary people out of their wits. Slowly raising his head, Noah's dark eyes were filled with unprecedented rage, but his face was still calm. He controlled his magic, aura, and murderous aura, not letting them affect Mira and Lisanna. Then, he handed the sleeping Lisanna to Mira. "Take good care of Lisanna." After saying that, Noah turned around. Behind him, a blue flame suddenly appeared out of nowhere and turned into two pairs of pitch-black wings that equipped Noah's back. Whoosh! In the next second, the magician in the form of the death feather on Noah's back spewed out a large amount of black light, which turned into a substantial propulsive force, causing Noah's figure to soar into the sky. With a turn, he rushed towards the direction of the guild like a stream of light. Mira finally reacted. She hugged the sleeping Lisanna and looked at Noah, who had turned into a streak of light and shot in the direction of the guild. After a long while, she said those words. "Be careful." Against the strong wind, Noah used the fastest speed of a magician in the death feather form to reduce the distance of 200 to 300 meters to zero in just 1 or 2 seconds. Floating in the air, Noah looked down at the guild building that had been destroyed by thick iron rods, the fury in his heart surging violently. To the guild members of Fairy Tale, the importance of the guild building was obvious. To Noah, it was not only the guild building, but also the place where he lived. It was his home. His home was destroyed. This fact directly threw Noah's ability to control his emotions, which he was best at, out of the window. He gave his body to the uncontrollable anger to drive him. Even so, the angrier he was, the clearer Noah's mind became, and his thoughts became sharper. In this situation, he only needed to think a little to understand what was going on. Someone was deliberately attacking the guild. With that thought in mind, Noah's gaze shot in a certain direction as if he had sensed something. There, in a small alley, a small dot was gradually becoming smaller at an astonishing speed. That dot was a person. Noah's eyes emitted a frightening cold light. Gotcha! Behind Noah, the death feather form of the magician shook, and with a mechanical sound, it split into a wing-like fragment and floated beside Noah. Wang! Bursts of energy like rays of light converged at the tip of the wing-like black fragment, and it rotated like a black hole. Not long after, it converged into a pitch-black ball of light. Bang! In the next second, the pitch-black ball of light directly exploded, turning into a beam of light, cutting through the sky like a meteor, flashing through the night sky, and falling on the body of the gradually fading black dot. Bang! Accompanied by the dull sound of the explosion, a burst of thick smoke and fire like a whirlpool covered the location of the black dot, setting off a violent storm that blew in all directions, shattering the walls of the buildings around the alley. Looking at the place covered by the thick smoke and fire in the distance, Noah waved his hand, and the wing-like black fragment floating beside him moved back and forth, and reassembled on the death feather form of the magician. Immediately, controlling the magician behind him, Noah bent down and flew away. In an empty alley, an open space seemed to have been hit by a meteorite, exposing a medium-sized pit to the air. The inside was charred black, and there were wisps of light smoke rising. Gravel rolled in the pit, and the two walls around the pit were also shattered by the shock waves. People who didn't know would definitely think that there were two sorcerers fighting here, and this was not rare in this continent where magic prevailed. At a certain moment, in the sky, the sound of a thruster engine reverberated, and a stream of light flew from the distance, arriving above the pit. Looking down at the pit below, Noah slowly descended from the sky and landed next to the pit. Looking around, there were no signs of life in the area covered by his sensing ability. Noah's face was calm, and he walked into the pit. He came to a corner of the pit that was still emitting wisps of light smoke, and looked at the ground there. There was a tattered piece of cloth depicting a certain coat of arms. It was the coat of arms of a certain guild. Picking up the tattered cloth from the ground, Noah stared at the coat of arms on the ground, and in his eyes, a bone-chilling cold light flashed. Phantom Lord. Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Chapter 369. When the sun rose once again, all the guild members gathered in front of the entrance of Fairy Tale, which had been battered black and blue by a thick iron rod. Looking at the miserable state of the guild in front of them, they couldn't help but avert their gazes. At the front of all the guild members, Makarov closed his eyes tightly. His expression was calm, but the hand that was holding the cane was trembling at an imperceptible frequency. It was obvious that his heart was extremely unsettled. Bang! In the crowd, Nazi clenched his fist and slammed it on the ground, creating a fist-sized hole in the ground. His face was filled with uncontrollable rage. Phantom Lord. Nazi's roar reverberated in the air, causing many people to be enraged as they clenched their fists tightly. Perhaps many people were like Naz, roaring the name of the guild that hoped to be cut into pieces thousands of times in their hearts. This is too much. Lisanna hugged Mira tightly as if she didn't want to see the miserable state of the guild. She buried her head in Myra's arms. How can they do this? Mira hugged Lisanna back and gently patted her head. Her usually gentle face was also filled with sadness. It was obvious that she felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart. Even Alusha, Lucy, Gray, Elfman, Karna, Lebby, Hubby, and the others lowered their heads in silence. They couldn't bear to see the miserable state of the guild and kept silent. Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord didn't have a good relationship to begin with. This was something that even outsiders knew. This was because in the current Fiori Kingdom, if one were to say which guild was the strongest, people would either say Fairy Tale or Phantom Lord. The two had always been competing for the position of the strongest guild, and neither was willing to submit to the other. Of course, Fairy Tale was simply unwilling to submit to Phantom Lord. However, Phantom Lord was extremely hostile towards Fairy Tale. Compared to Fairy Tale, Phantom Lord not only had a longer history, but also had many branches under his command. It could be said that they had the most members of any guild in the Fiori Kingdom. In Phantom Lord's view, Fairy Tale was not only a new guild, but also had a small number of members. They didn't even have a branch, so how could they compete with them for the position of the strongest guild? But it was undeniable that although Fairy Tale had a small number of members, they had a lot of strong players. Kildas, Laxas, Mishgang, Alusha. Any one of these people had the ability to destroy all of the Phantom Lord's branches. Under such circumstances, who would dare to say that Fairy Tale was weak? It was also because of this that Phantom Lord, who was jealous of Fairy Tale for having too many strong players, was so hostile towards Fairy Tale. In addition, Makarov had once fought with Phantom Lord's guild leader and won. Since then, Phantom Lord had been looking for trouble with Fairy Tale. This could be seen from the fact that Noah had been attacked by Phantom Lord when he was young. However, no one would have thought that the Phantom Lord would directly attack the Fairy Tale's guild building. It must be known that the council had explicitly stated that guilds were not allowed to fight privately. Otherwise, the punishment would be light and the guild could even be disbanded. As such, who would have thought that the Phantom Lord would still dare to attack the guild? Even Noah could only watch helplessly as his guild was destroyed because he had not thought of it, right? Sigh. After an unknown amount of time, Makarov finally sighed and his tone returned to normal. Immediately get someone to repair the guild. Before the guild is repaired, everyone should clear out the underground warehouse and use it as a temporary workplace. What about Phantom Lord? The hot-headed Naz shouted without hesitation. Let's go and wipe them out. Naz. Makarov's expression did not change and he still sighed. This matter ends here. None of you are allowed to privately seek revenge. What? This time, not only Naz, but everyone else in the guild exclaimed. Guild Master. Alusha stepped forward and looked straight at Makarov. You mean, we're just going to let it go? Impossible. Without waiting for Makarov to answer, Naz roared. If I don't send those fellows flying, I will definitely not give up. Naz. Hubby called out with some worry. Calm down, Naz. Lucy also spoke quickly, but there was also a trace of sadness in her eyes. This is the guild master's order. I don't care. Naz, whose heart was filled with anger, said bluntly. If none of you are going, then I'll go. Calm down. Stinky fire. Gray couldn't stand it anymore. Do you know what you're talking about? Do you want to violate the guild master's decision? Naz seemed to want to say something, but he was stopped by Alusha. After taking a deep breath, Alusha regained her composure. If this is the guild master's decision, then we all have to abide by it. Naz, you should understand what I will do if you mess around, right? The veins on Naz's head bulged, and in the end, he could only growl sullenly. Damn it! Under Naz's unwilling growl, many people closed their eyes sadly. Who would be willing? But Makarov's decision was right. After all, private conflicts between guilds were prohibited. In order to protect the guild, they could only swallow this anger into their stomachs. Of course, it was also because there was no one in the destroyed guild. If someone was injured, Makarov would never tolerate it. If the building was destroyed, then Makarov's decision was destined to be only one. Endure. However, even if Makarov could endure it, it didn't mean that others could. Noah, who had been quietly watching this scene from the corner, suddenly turned around and walked in another direction. Brother Noah. Lisanna, who was closest to Noah, noticed this and quickly called out. Where are you going? With one sentence, everyone's gaze was attracted to Noah. Noah. Mira, who felt a bad premonition, also spoke. Don't be impulsive. Noah. At the front of the crowd, Makarov shouted without turning his head. Come back here. Noah stopped in his tracks and turned around. His face was as calm as the calm before the storm. It was a face that struck fear in others. I'm sorry, Grandpa. To you, this is just a guild being destroyed, but to me, it's my home being destroyed. Since that's the case, it's normal for me to go and ask for some compensation. Besides, if I go alone, it won't be considered a conflict between guilds, right? What do you mean? Makarov was startled and turned around abruptly. You want to challenge a guild by yourself? Hearing this, Noah laughed. His laugh was unusually cold. Noah turned around and left only one sentence. One person is enough. With that, Noah strode forward and disappeared at the end of the street. Seeing this, Makarov sighed again. Mira and Lisanna looked at each other and placed their hands in front of their chest, as if praying for Noah's safety. Chapter 370. This was a hall located at the top of a magnificent building. At the very front of the hall, there was a throne-like seat. A middle-aged man wearing a sorcerer's hat and looking very similar to a sorcerer was sitting on it, looking down. His sinister face was slightly gloomy at this moment, and he did not look very good. And in the hall, 5 people were standing side by side. No. It should be said that there were 4 people standing side by side, and the remaining person was kneeling on the ground with one knee. His whole body was in tatters, and one of his hands seemed to have been burned. His whole body was charred black, and blood was dripping out. It seemed that his injury was not light. If there was someone in the know here, they would definitely be able to recognize the identity of the people here. Sitting on the throne-like seat was the president of Phantom Lord, like Makarov, who also had the title of one of the 10 Saint Archmages Joseph Bala. And standing side by side in the hall were the 4 S-rank Archmages of Phantom Lord, who had the title of 4 Elements Aliyah, Julian, Saul, and Bun Bun Ball. As for the one kneeling on the ground with his hands still dripping with blood, it was the existence of Phantom Lord, who was known as the strongest Archmage Gadula Late Fox. However, this existence known as Phantom Lord, who was known as the strongest Archmage, didn't seem to be in a very good condition. This was also the main reason why the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph, had such an ugly expression on his face. You said that after you attacked Fairy Tale last night, someone attacked you. That's right. Gadula's expression was also unsightly. His eyes were filled with savagery, and there was even a wild rage surging in them. At that time, I had already started to withdraw, but I was suddenly attacked. If I hadn't noticed the strange smell in the air and dodged in advance, now, I wouldn't be as simple as just being injured. You're saying that not only does someone in Fairy Tale have the ability to injure you like this, but they can also attack you without you noticing? Joseph said in a low voice. Who is it? Laxus? Mishgang? Or that fairy queen Felusha? It shouldn't be that Kildas who travels all year round, right? Could it be Makarov himself? Joseph could only think of these people. After all, Joseph knew of Gadula's strength. In the Fairy Tale, there was absolutely no one else who could silently injure Gadula like this with a single attack. Joseph was very confident of this point. After all, as a guild that had always been hostile towards him, any information regarding Fairy Tale was of utmost importance to Joseph. Therefore, Joseph was confident that unless it wasn't someone from Fairy Tale, only the existences he could think of could hurt Gadula in one strike. Unfortunately, Joseph made a mistake this time. After 4 years of hard work and 2 years of traveling, Noah had long faded out of the sight of the people who paid attention to Fairy Tale. His fame was lower than Naz, Gray, and the others, so it was naturally impossible for him to enter Joseph's eyes. Sad, really sad. Aliyah's voice was sobbing as if she could cry at any time. I really feel sad for Mr. Gadulu. Julian doesn't think it's President Makarov. Julian, who was holding an umbrella, said with a somewhat melancholy expression. If that person personally attacked, Mr. Gadula would definitely be able to detect it. That's true. Bunny Ball, who had a sword at his waist like a warrior, said in a deep voice. I heard that Makarov's magic is the type that makes a lot of noise. If he attacked Mr. Gadula would definitely be able to detect it. No. 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 Thor, who was dressed like a gentleman, said with a smile while twisting his body like a clown. Then it's Laxus, Mishgang, or Alusha, right? Is that right? Hearing the words of the 4 elements, Gadula raised his eyes filled with ruthlessness and coldly looked around. Shut up. Hearing that, whether it was Aliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, or Thor, they all obediently shut their mouths. Obviously, even the 4 elements were afraid of Gadulu. You're so long-winded. If I knew who it was, would I still need to stand with you with such an ugly appearance? Gadula spat out a mouthful of saliva and said bitterly. Remember, don't let me know who you are. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present sensed it. The ground, just now, shook. Bang! Immediately after, an explosive sound reverberated from below and entered the ears of everyone present. Joseph narrowed his eyes and smiled. Could it be that fairy tale is here? Oh. Gadula giggled, and that smile was extremely cruel. I thought it would take more effort to lure them here, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. Sure enough, fairy tale is only at this level. Hearing Gadula's words, the four magic shooters of the four elements looked at each other. At this point, it was easy to guess what was going on. It felt like the Phantom Lord's attack on Fairy Tale was all planned out, and it wasn't because of a momentary conflict. If Makarov really attacked, it would save me a lot of trouble. Joseph smiled gloomily. But before that, let's make sure. Saying this, Joseph stood up and looked down at the 5 people below. I'll leave this place to you guys. If it's just the people from Fairy Tale, then cripple them all. Just remember not to kill them. If Makarov is also here, then we'll proceed according to plan. Yes. Aliyah, Julian, Bunnyball, and Saul all responded at the same time. As for Mr. Gadulu, Joseph frowned. Since you're all injured, why don't you take a rest? Injured? Gadula laughed, and his laughter was unusually irritable. This kind of injury, as long as I'm full, I'll be able to recover in no time. Is that so? Joseph smiled with satisfaction. Then I'll leave it to you. Leaving this sentence, Joseph's figure turned into a black shadow and disappeared into the air. Compared to Fairy Tale, the building of Phantom Lord was a bit gloomy. At first glance, one could tell that it wasn't a place suitable for people with cheerful personalities. Here, a bunch of delinquent youths and hoodlums were gathered together, eating and drinking to their heart's content. From time to time, they would let out angry curses, causing the entire Phantom Lord to be in an uproar. However, the noise here was different from that in Fairy Tale. If the noises of Fairy Tale belonged to the daily quarrel between friends, then the noises of Phantom Lord were the kind of chaos where a group of hooligans gathered together, making people flinch at the sight of it. Just as the magic shooters in Phantom Lord were making noise, suddenly, the ground shook slightly. Bang dash. In the next second, the door of the Phantom Lord exploded, turning into fragments that shot out in all directions like bullets. What's wrong? What's going on? The magic shooters in Phantom Lord stood up in fright and looked toward the door. There, a figure slowly appeared. Chapter 371. Who? Without any hesitation, the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord all grabbed their weapons and stood up, looking fiercely in the direction of the door. As long as one was not a fool, they would definitely be able to guess what had happened in the first instance. Someone is here to pick a fight. Under the watchful gazes of the magic shooters, Noah passed through the smoke and flames caused by the explosion of the door and appeared in the eyes of all the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord. He raised his head and swept his torch-like eyes forward. The group of Phantom Lord magic shooters saw Noah appear at the door. At first, they were startled, then they looked at each other and laughed out loud. What, so it's a little brat? Why is this little brat here? Could it be that he's lost? Kid, do you need us to take you to find your mother? Ah ha ha ha. Without exception, all the sorcerers who belonged to the Phantom Lord chose to ridicule him at this moment. In the eyes of these magic shooters, a person like Noah who was not even 20 years old, even if he was a magic shooter, was just a little brat. Since he dared to come to the Phantom Lord to pick a fight, one could imagine what would happen to him later. Of course, the most important thing was not because Noah was relatively young, but because Noah was only one person. Otherwise, these magic shooters who knew their own worth would definitely not have the guts to laugh at someone who dared to come to the Phantom Lord to pick a fight. In the face of the mockery from the Phantom Lord's magic shooters, Noah's expression remained unchanged, but the look in his eyes became slightly disdainful, and there was also some indignation and anger in his eyes. Are all the magic shooters of Phantom Lord, such magic shooters of Phantom Lord, such magic shooters? Was the guild that had hidden so many small fries to cause trouble for Fairy Tale? They didn't even have a single person with good eyesight. How could these guys compete with Fairy Tale for the title of the strongest guild? And on what basis did he dare to make a move against Fairy Tale? Driven by this thought, Noah's face became colder and colder. He ignored the mockery of the Phantom Lord and spoke indifferently. "Tell Joseph to get out here." With that one sentence, the mocking laughter that echoed throughout the entire Phantom Lord guild came to an abrupt halt. A man walked out of the crowd and stood in front of all the Phantom Lord archmages. He seemed to be the most prestigious person among the archmages present. He represented the entire Phantom Lord and looked coldly at Noah. "You little brat, you dare to call our president by his name. Don't even think about leaving here today." Hearing this, Noah was about to say something, but when he saw the speaker coming out of the crowd, he was slightly startled. Then, a light flashed in his eyes. Noah knew this person. Although he had only met him once when he was young, Noah had a very deep impression of him. Because this person in front of him had left a hideous scar on Noah's hand that was enough to last a lifetime. It was Moglia who had led the Phantom Lord branch archmages to intercept Noah, Elisha, and Laxus during the ritual lake mission. He had attacked Noah's group and left a hideous scar on Noah's hand. After 7 years, the archmage who had seen the potential of Noah, Elisha, and Laxus and who had wanted to eradicate the future pillar of Fairy Tale by hook or by crook had finally appeared in front of Noah once again. As soon as he saw Moglia's face, which was relatively older and colder than 7 years ago, Noah smiled. His smile was unusually excited. "Oh, isn't this Mr. Moglia who was easily defeated by Laxus, who was also a little brat?" Moglia's cold face suddenly stiffened, and then became ferocious. "Who are you? How do you know about this? Speak!" Moglia yelled at the top of his lungs. Back then, the matter of Laxus being able to resolve it so cleanly had always been a thick thorn in Moglia's heart. That was to be expected. Moglia was very conceited. When they first met, he had obviously looked down on Noah, Elisha, and Laxus's group. However, because of the commission, he had lost a lot of face. That was still nothing. The key was that under such circumstances, Moglia had led people to block Noah's group. In the end, not only had he been stimulated by the talent and potential of Noah and Elisha, but he had also been easily defeated by Laxus. This made the conceited Moglia go crazy countless times after the incident. However, what could Moglia do? As time passed, Laxus, who had easily defeated Moglia, became an S-rank magic shooter. His strength improved rapidly. Elisha also began to show her talent and received the title of Fairy Queen. Her reputation shook the entire Fiori kingdom. Compared to Elisha and Laxus, Moglia was already more than 40 years old 7 years ago. His potential had long been exhausted. In these 7 years, his strength could only be described as the speed of a turtle compared to Elisha and Laxus. Until now, he had not reached the level of an S-rank magic shooter. How would Moglia dare to seek revenge? He could only bear this grudge and swallow this resentment in his heart. However, after 7 years, this humiliation that almost made Moglia go crazy was once again mentioned. How could Moglia not fly into a rage? Mr. Moglia is really forgetful. Facing Moglia's rage, Noah only sneered. He raised his hand, rolled up his sleeves, and showed his bandaged hand to Moglia. "Don't tell me you forgot that in order to protect Elisha, you left a scar on my hand." "Elisha? Fairy Queen." Moglia was suddenly shocked, and then his eyes widened. "So it's you. In this life, Mowgli and Alusha only met once when they were young. In addition, Noah also mentioned laxes and the matter of protecting Alusha. How could Mowgli not think of Noah? One must know that in the past, Noah, who did not know magic, also fiercely punched Mowgli's face. That humiliation was not one bit less than being cleanly dealt with by laxes. Stinking brat. Looking at Noah's face full of ridicule, Mowgli's hidden scar in his heart was finally completely opened, causing Mowgli to madly roar. "I'll kill you." After saying this, Mowgli's entire body exploded with a burst of extremely violent and frightening lightning. His body turned into a bolt of lightning, and like a bolt of lightning, he rushed in the direction of Noah, and violently shot in front of Noah. "Go to hell." In the midst of the angry roar, Mowgli raised his fist, which was surrounded by lightning, against the hot air, and mercilessly swung it at Noah's head amidst the sharp sound of the air breaking. If this punch really hit, then even if it was a magic shooter with decent strength, his head would directly explode, and he would die on the spot. Obviously, Mowgli did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy. Once he made a move, it was a sure kill blow, and he wanted to kill Noah. Unfortunately, Mowgli was destined to live in tragedy for the rest of his life. Starting from 7 years ago when he chose to surround Noah and his group. Hence, before Mowgli could see the scene of Noah's head exploding from his punch, a hand suddenly appeared in front of him, passed through the layers of lightning on Mowgli's body, and landed a punch on Mowgli's chest. Bang! A violent impact with extremely terrifying power surged into Mowgli's body. Poochie! Mowgli only felt as if he was hit by a heavy hammer. His chest shook, his body trembled, and he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 372. Crimson blood spurted out of Mowgli's mouth and sprayed in the direction of Noah. Noah casually sidestepped and avoided the spray of blood. He twisted his body and suddenly lifted his leg. His thigh was like a long whip as it suddenly lashed out and heavily smashed into Mowgli's chest before he could be sent flying. That position was exactly the same as the position where Noah had previously swung his fist. Bang! Along with a muffled sound, a gotcha sound was heard from Mowgli's chest. Wah! Blood spurted out of Mowgli's mouth as if it was free of charge. Mowgli himself was hit by Noah's meteor-like kick and suddenly fell to the ground, smashing it until it cracked slightly. Looking at this scene, the group of Phantom Lord magic shooters were all shocked and dumbfounded. Stepping on Mowgli's chest and looking down at Mowgli's face that was covered in blood, Noah's face was calm. "I've repaid my debt to you. You. Mowgli raised his hand with difficulty and pointed at Noah with a trembling hand. Other than disbelief, there was only disbelief on his face. Unlike those Phantom Lord magic shooters, Mowgli knew that Noah was a fairy tale magic shooter. However, in the past 7 years, the reputation of the powerful magic shooters in Fairy Tale had long been known by everyone. Even the fire-annihilating dragon magic shooter, Naz, had made a name for himself. However, Noah had not made a name for himself in the past 7 years. When Laxus became an S-rank magic shooter and his strength advanced by leaps and bounds, the name Noah did not appear. When Alusha received the title Fairy Queen and her reputation shook the Fiori Kingdom, the name Noah still did not appear. Later, when Demon Mirror Jenny, Fire Dragon Naz, the enigmatic Mishgang, and even Grey and Elfman made a name for themselves, the name Noah did not appear at all. Only when people mentioned Makarov and Laxus's family did they make a name for themselves. Other than that, not to mention the Fiori Kingdom, even the people of Magnolia did not mention Noah. Over time, Mowgli thought that he had misjudged Noah and thought that he was not a genius at all. In the beginning, he still wanted to find trouble with Noah, but later on, because there was no news of Noah, he threw it to the back of his mind. He did not expect that after 7 years, this person would appear in front of him once again. Just when he thought that he could still crush him with one hand, the result was that he was defeated in one move. At this moment, Mowgli only felt that his vision turned black. The humiliation that emerged from his heart was 1,000 times, 10,000 times heavier than before. Because this time, Mowgli was no longer dealt with cleanly by a little brat in the wilderness. Instead, he was dealt with in front of the many colleagues of the Phantom Lord. From now on, everyone would know of Mowgli's embarrassing incident. They would know that he had overestimated himself and rushed out, only to be cleanly defeated in the end. Poochie! The uncontrollable humiliation made Mowgli spit out another mouthful of blood. His head tilted to one side and he actually fainted. Seeing this, Noah frowned and snorted coldly. When I think that it was a guy like you who left a scar on my hand, I feel disgusted. After saying this, Noah lifted the foot that was stepping on Mowgli's chest and ruthlessly kicked his side ribs. Pang! In the muffled sound, Mowgli's limp body that was lying on the ground was kicked away like a rubber ball. He smashed into a table not far away and was buried by the table debris and tableware in a burst of crackling sounds. I'll say it again. Just like kicking away a rock that was in the way, after kicking Mowgli away, Noah stepped forward step by step and walked into the Phantom Lord's guild. He stared coldly at the group of sorcerers who looked like gangsters. Tell Joseph to get out here, or else, I'll tear this place down. The group of magic shooters from the Phantom Lord all retreated together with a frightened expression on their faces. This time, no one dared to look down on Noah. It must be known that Mowgli's strength was one of the best in the Phantom Lord, and was only below Gajalu and the Four Elements. Even such a person was defeated by the little brat that everyone from the Phantom Lord had just mocked. Who would be stupid enough to continue to think that Noah was just a little brat? However, there was no lack of people in this world who overestimated their own strength. Don't. Everyone, don't be afraid. In the crowd, a deliberately fierce voice shouted. No matter how powerful he is, he's only one person. There are so many of us here, why should we be afraid of a kid? Everyone, let's attack together. This sentence made the magic shooters from the Phantom Lord hesitate for a moment, and then they all showed a sinister expression. Attack! Everyone, attack together. Oh, oh, oh. Oh. Not long after, the whole Phantom Lord guild roared. One by one, magic shooters rushed out with weapons in their hands, like crazy wild dogs or bullies bullying the weak, and rushed towards Noah. With just a glance, Noah could tell that these so-called sorcerers who were rushing towards him were using magic similar to the outfit change type of magic. In other words, the magic these people used was the most common type. There were redeeming qualities. However, not a single person was able to display their full potential. Trash. Real trash. This was the drawback of the Phantom Lord focusing too much on developing the guild scale and expanding its influence, but not concentrating on cultivating the strong. Therefore, other than Gajalu and the Four Elements, the only thing that the Phantom Lord could bring out was the number of people. Thinking that it was such a guild that destroyed his own guild, Noah's anger rose in his heart. Square root. Spitting out a language that no one could understand, Noah raised his hand, gathered magic on his finger, and wrote a faintly discernible mysterious rune in the air in front of him. Whang! Suddenly, in front of Noah, the air suddenly condensed, spiraled, and turned into a gust of wind, like a substantial shock wave, suddenly shaking out. Dong! In an instant, it was as if an invisible explosion had occurred in the entire Phantom Lord guild. The shock wave formed by the surging wind was like a wave, hitting the magic shooters one by one. Bang! The magic shooters of the Phantom Lord felt as if they had hit a wall, and then, in bursts of screams, they flew upside down, or hit the ground, or hit the wall, overturning tables and chairs, and cracking the ground, causing the ground to shake violently. For a time, the sound of wailing continued to reverberate. In just a moment, all the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord were defeated by Noah. In this regard, Noah just withdrew his hand and sighed. "Are you done watching the show?" The whole place suddenly became quiet. After a while, a few figures appeared at the entrance of the stairs in front of Noah's eyes. It was Gadjalu and the four elements. Noah's gaze swept across Gadjalu, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul, and finally fell on Gadjalu. From this person, Noah could sense the aura of the person from last night. Therefore, there was no doubt that the person who attacked the fairy tale guild was this guy in front of him. Gadjalu Red Fox. Chapter 373. The wails of the sorcerers from the Phantom Lord were still echoing in the air. In the middle of the magic shooters lying on the ground, Noah, Gadjalu, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul looked at each other from a distance, causing the atmosphere in the air to become heavy. Too sad. Too sad. Aaliyah, whose eyes were wrapped with a cloth, cried without the slightest warning. "A young life will wither here in a while, it's really too sad." No. 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 Saul twisted his body like an earthworm, spread out his hands pretentiously, tilted his head, and looked at Noah. "Although it's just a group of small fries, to be able to defeat so many magic shooters in an instant, you're definitely not an ordinary kid. I'm very curious about who you are." The sharp-eyed Bunny Ball saw the guild emblem on the back of Noah's hand and frowned. "Fairy tale. Makarov actually let you come alone." Pitter-patter-patter. Julian, who was holding an umbrella, also had a sullen expression. "Unfortunately, it seems that this person can't leave here." The four S-rank magic shooters from the Phantom Lord spoke as if there was no one else around. They didn't take the wailing magic shooters lying on the ground seriously, nor did they show any importance to Noah, as if they had already sentenced Noah to death. Only Gadjalu, whose inorganic eyes seemed to be cast out of steel, stared at Noah with a gloomy expression. "You're the one who attacked me last night, right?" These words shocked the members of the four elements, and they all looked at Noah one after another. Him. The sorcerer who defeated the entire Phantom Lord was not worthy of much praise from the people of the four elements. After all, as a member of the same guild, it was impossible for the Four Elements Guild not to know how lousy the normal magic shooters in the Phantom Lord were. But if the other party was the one who injured Gadjalu last night, then it would be different. After all, even Joseph claimed that in Fairy Tale, apart from those S-rank magic shooters, no one could injure Gadjalu to such an extent. In other words, if the person in front of him was really the culprit who injured Gadjalu and was also a magic shooter from Fairy Tale, then the other party's strength was definitely S-rank. The four elements had no choice but to pay attention to this matter. So that's how it is. Noah looked directly at Gadjalu and suddenly smiled. "In other words, the person who attacked my house last night was really you, right?" He. Gadjalu let out a strange laugh. "That's right, I was the one who turned your union into a pile of trash." "Is that so?" Noah closed his eyes. "Then I found the right person." As soon as his voice fell. Boom! With the sound of an explosion and a gorgeous vortex of air under Noah's feet, Noah's body turned into a stream of light and flashed like a comet, instantly appearing in front of Gadjalu. In the next moment, a wisp of blue flame rose from Noah's hand and turned into a pitch-black knight's sword, which fell into Noah's hand. Clang! The slash that turned into a dazzling sword light suddenly flashed, and like a whip, it flung across Gadjalu's body. Poochie! A burst of blood burst out in front of Gadjalu's chest. Blood spilled into the sky. Gadjalu's pupils slowly shrank, and soon shrank to the size of a needle tip. His body carried a burst of blood, and as if he was flying out in the air, he retreated. As for the four elements, their expressions gradually stiffened when they saw the blood droplets flying into the air. Regardless of whether it was Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, or Saul, none of them could react, let alone know what had happened. Only Gadula looked at Noah, who was 10 meters away a second ago and suddenly appeared in front of him. Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light as he held the black knight's sword in his hand. A sharp pain spread from his chest to his whole body as he felt it in hindsight. With a closer look, Gadulus saw a hideous and terrifying wound from his shoulder to his ribs. Along with a burst of red blood, his clothes were dyed red little by little. Gadulu, who vaguely sensed what had happened, had a fierce expression. Ignoring the serious wound on his chest, he stomped on the ground with one foot and steadied himself. Then, he clenched his iron-gloved hand into a fist and raised it. Iron Dragon Staff. As soon as he finished speaking, Gadula waved his fist fiercely. His fist directly transformed into a thick iron rod, like a steel water pipe taken out from an underground tunnel somewhere. With a gust of wind, it violently shot towards Noah's face like an arrow released from a bow. Bang! Just as the thick iron staff was about to hit Noah's face, Noah raised his hand and firmly caught the incoming thick iron staff with a muffled sound and a slight gust of wind. Only then did the four elements react. Shocked, they jumped up without hesitation and put some distance between them. Looking at the scene in the middle, a shocked expression appeared on their faces. Drip, one hand turned into an iron staff and swung forward, while the other hand held the wound on his chest. A drop of blood dripped from Gadula's body and gradually dyed the ground red. Cough, cough. Gadula couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. He raised his head and stared at Noah not far in front of him, growling. Bastard. Not bad. You can still launch an attack with such a heavy injury. However, you dare to attack my house directly. If you don't have this ability, you won't be able to do it. Holding the iron staff formed by Gadula's fist, Noah raised his eyes and looked at Gadulu. There was only calmness on his face. If I'm not wrong, you should be using the same spell as our guild's Naz Dragon Slayer spell, right? Who would tell you this, guy? Enduring the severe pain in his chest, Gadulu angrily shouted. Who are you? Since when did fairy tale have a character like you? I've never even heard of you. Damn it. It doesn't matter if you don't know me. Noah sneered. Next, I'll make sure you never forget me. This time, before his voice faded, Noah's figure suddenly rushed out, causing Gadulu's vision to blur. Then, Noah's figure appeared in front of him again, bringing along a whirlwind. His fist punched out, viciously smashing towards Gadula's head. Due to the destruction of his guild, Noah had unleashed every ounce of power he had this time. He had held nothing back. Under such circumstances, Gadula was not a powerful opponent for Noah at all. Thus, when Noah's fist was about to reach Gadula's head, Gadula sensed it while being on high alert. His expression changed drastically, and in a hurry, he raised his hands and crossed them in front of his head. Mana surged up, turning his arms into steel. Clank! The heavy fist landed heavily on Gadula's crossed arms that had turned into steel. Gadula let out a muffled sound and his feet slid across the ground. After retreating for nearly 10 meters, he finally stabilized his body. Feeling the numbness from Noah's punch, shock appeared on Gadula's face. His hands had turned into steel, yet he could still cause such an impact. Who on earth was this person? You're still looking. Gadula yelled at the four elementals beside him in shock. Let's go together. Hearing this, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul suddenly woke up. They couldn't care less about their numbers and began to surge the mana in their bodies. But at this moment, Noah didn't choose to continue attacking. Instead, he lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rapidly retreated. Whing! Without giving Gadjaloo and the four elements any chance to react, a circle of gorgeous rainbow ripples spread out from the ground with Gadjaloo as the center and instantly covered the ground where Gadjaloo and the four elements were. In the gorgeous rainbow ripples, runes flashed one after another. Surprisingly, it was the rune script. Chapter 374. Wang. The gorgeous rainbow-colored ripples seemed to have turned the ground into a rainbow-colored lake. Wherever the ripples touched, the ground was replaced by rainbow-colored light, turning into a gorgeous curtain of light. In the curtain of light, mysterious runes jumped up and down like small fish, blooming with dazzling light. When combined together, they formed the beautiful curtain of light on the ground. If one were to count them carefully, they would find that there were at least 1,000 runes written on the ground. In other words, Noah had unknowingly carved more than 1,000 runes on the ground where Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul were. If Qing Zi, Yu Zhu, or Qing, who was also a master of the rune magic, knew about this, they would definitely be shocked. Although after a certain degree of improvement, magicians who used the rune magic trick could more or less increase the speed of inscribing rune magic trick, imagine how proficient Noah was at inscribing so many rune magic tricks without even realizing it. One could only imagine how proficient he was at the rune magic trick. As for Noah, it had been less than 3 months since he had learned the first elementary level of the rune script. In 3 months, he had improved the rune magic to such an extent. Perhaps the gods, priests, and witches who used the runes in Norse mythology could do it, but among modern magicians, there was absolutely no one who could do it to such an extent. Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul, who didn't know what kind of feat Noah had done, only felt that something strange had happened on the ground. When they discovered that the ground had been replaced by the rainbow-colored curtain of light, they suddenly shouted in unison, "Oh no! Wang!" At this moment, the rainbow-colored curtain of light on the ground suddenly shook, and the light on it became even more dazzling. Immediately, dazzling pillars of light suddenly rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light. Ding 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 ding. Every pillar of light raised a bell-like sound, and in a short period of time, countless pillars of light rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light. When Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul reacted, the dazzling pillars of light rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light and formed a light cage around them, imprisoning them inside. Wang! Gadjaloo resisted the sharp pain in his body, raised his steel-like fist, and heavily smashed it on the light cage. Clang! In the end, the blow that was powerful enough to shatter the wall only caused a crisp sound. It was as if it had also hit steel, and there was not even a trace of a crack. What kind of magic is this? Rune magic. Aaliyah, who could no longer pretend to cry. She removed the bandage around her eyes. Her eyes, which looked like 4 petals combined, exuded a strange aura, which made Aaliyah's magic power by several levels. Sky Domain Absolute. Aaliyah raised her palm, which gathered a large amount of magic power, and like Gadjaloo, heavily smashed it on the light cage. Bang! A powerful shockwave suddenly appeared like a storm and landed on the light prison. However, it only caused the entire light prison to tremble, but it was unable to create even a single crack. Impossible! Aaliyah cried out in alarm. I've already released all my magic power, but I still can't break this cage. Even Gadjaloo and Aaliyah couldn't do anything to the prison of light, so Julian, Bunny Ball, and Thor couldn't do anything. After all, Gadjaloo was known as the most powerful sorcerer in the Phantom Lord. Aaliyah, on the other hand, was the leader of the 4 elements and the strongest of them all. If Gadjaloo and Aaliyah couldn't break this cage, then Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul couldn't do anything either. Not even Julibian. The umbrella in Julibian's hand was thrown away at some point, and his body turned into water, but he couldn't pass through the cage. This cage can reflect magic power. Even the ground is imprisoned. Saul cried out. Even I, who can control sand, can't drill into the ground. There's no way out of this cage. Tisk. Bunny Pill, who knew that magic was useless, even used the knife at his waist to slash at the light cage, but it only made a crisp clang sound. No, physical attacks can't break it. In other words, the 5 strongest members of the Phantom Lord, with the exception of the guild leader Joseph, were all subdued by Noah in one move. In front of Noah, regardless of whether it was the strongest of the Phantom Lords, Gadjalu, or the 4 elements, who was comparable to an S-rank magic shooter, they were all like ordinary magic shooters lying on the ground. They were not a match for Noah's one move. This was to be expected. This cage, if it was the S-rank magic shooters of Fairy Tale, any one of them would have the ability to break it. Noah, who was holding the pitch-black knight's sword, stood in front of the 5 light cages and looked at Gadjalu's group of 5 as he sneered. And the S-rank sorcerer of the Phantom Lord doesn't seem to have the ability to do so. The expressions of Gadjalu and the 4 elements immediately turned ugly. In the outside world, people had always compared Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord, saying that the 2 guilds were evenly matched. Fairy Tale had 5 S-rank magic shooters, including Mira, Elusha, Kildas, Laxus, and Mishgang. The Phantom Lord also had Gadjalu, Olia, Jubian, Bunny Ball, and Thor, a group of 5 S-rank sorcerers. Therefore, outsiders had always thought that the 2 guilds were evenly matched. However, this was actually a misconception. The difficulty of the S-rank magic shooter's advancement test in each guild was different. As for Fairy Tale's S-rank magic shooter advancement test, it had always been known as the most difficult test. This was because only S-rank magic shooters could accept S-rank missions. Because S-rank missions were too dangerous, and because Makarov loved everyone in the guild and treated them as his own family and children, Makarov raised the difficulty of the S-rank magic shooter's advancement test to the highest level. That way, the magic shooters who could pass the test with powerful abilities would naturally have a higher chance of surviving the mission. But Phantom Lord was obviously different. Unlike Makarov, Joseph did not treat the members of the guild as his family. In Noah's opinion, the so-called S-rank magic shooters of Phantom Lord were better than Naz and Grey, while some could only be considered at the same level. They could not be compared to S-rank magic shooters like Mira and Elusha. And for Noah, who had absolute confidence in defeating such an opponent, even the 10 saints Makarov, Kildas, and Laxus, would not need too much time to go all out and take him down. Noah stepped forward and arrived in front of Gadjalu. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Gadjalu's collar, pulling him over. Bang! Gadjalu's head suddenly slammed into the light cage, making him furious. You bastard! You destroyed our guild, so I'll destroy your guild too. Noah tightened his grip on Gadjalu's collar and looked at Gadjalu's angry face with an indifferent smile. If you're not convinced, remember to look for me at any time. My name is Noah Doria. With that, Noah let go of Gadjalu, glanced at everyone present, turned around, and walked out, disappearing in front of the door. The moment Noah left, all the runes on the ground swelled up. Boom! Not long after, a mushroom cloud rose into the sky amidst the thunderous explosion. Chapter 375. Paw. Paw paw, the sound of small stones rolling down echoed from time to time, spreading in all directions. Among them, a piece of stone rolled towards the distance, rolling to the foot of a clown-like boot. Bang! The clown-like boot violently lifted up the foot, crushing the stone that rolled to his foot. Following the crushing of the stone, an indescribable evil aura spread out from the owner of the foot. The person who came was the leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph. Lifting his gloomy skeleton-like face, Joseph gloomily looked at the scene in front of him. He saw that the large building that should have stood there had long disappeared and was replaced by ruins. Rubble from the walls were piled up everywhere in the ruins. Broken pillars were lying crookedly on the bodies of the people buried under the rubble. Flames burned in every corner of the ruins, and a burnt smell filled the air. Seeing the guild building, which was still intact an hour ago, turn into a pile of rubble right before his eyes, the fury and murderous intent in Joseph's heart uncontrollably surged, causing the ink-black and evil magic energy within his body to continuously surge, bringing about an evil aura that sent chills down one's spine. There was only one person here, Joseph. To be precise, Joseph was the only one who maintained a complete consciousness and was unscathed. Looking at the magic shooters who were lying in the corners, buried under rubble or crushed by pillars, Joseph's anger and murderous intent became more and more violent. He didn't know if they were dead or alive, and the magic shooters who should have belonged to the Phantom Lord became more and more violent. Of course, even though Joseph was the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, he wasn't the kind of guild leader who would take pity on his subordinates and sympathize with them. For Joseph, as long as he could ensure the absolute ruling position of the Phantom Lord, and not reduce the overall strength of the Phantom Lord, then he would not feel any heartache about the deaths of his subordinates. The real reason why Joseph was so angry and couldn't help but squander his killing intent was that he had only been away for a short hour, and in the end, his own guild had been reduced to ruins. Who was it? Who had the guts and ability to do this? What about Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul? Could it be that the person who came was a powerful enemy of the Phantom Lord, who had the ability to destroy the elites of the Phantom Lord? Makarov? No. Impossible. If it was Makarov, then the Phantom Lord, who had already prepared the means to deal with Makarov, would not have become like this. With incomprehensible doubts, frenzied anger, and murderous intent, Joseph lifted his feet and walked into the ruined Phantom Lord. He came to the middle of what was supposed to be the hole. There were only 5 people lying here. They were the so-called elites of the Phantom Lord, in Joseph's mind Gadjaloo and the 4 elements. However, at this moment, not only were these so-called elites of the Phantom Lord covered in wounds, but they were all on the verge of death. Especially Gadjaloo, the injuries on his body were so severe that it was terrifying. If he was not treated, he might even die. In this regard, Joseph did not have any pity in his heart. There was only crazy anger and murderous intent. Paw-dash. At this moment, a charred hand reached out from the side and grabbed Joseph's foot. Joseph subconsciously lowered his head and looked at his feet. There, Aaliyah, who had unsealed the seal on her eyes, propped up a pair of eyes that seemed to be bleeding due to excessive use of magic power. She weakly and with great difficulty, spat out a word. This word made the anger and murderous intent in Joseph's heart burst out instantly. Fairy tale. Not long after, Joseph's roar, accompanied by a dark evil magic power, surged into the sky. Joseph did not know. After the fairy tale guild was destroyed, many people in the fairy tale guild were like him, roaring the Phantom Lord in their hearts. On the other side, when Noah returned to the fairy tale, once again, a beautiful figure rushed out and hugged Noah. Big brother Noah. Lisanna. Noah knew who the person in his arms was the moment he heard her address him. He patted her on the back and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's wrong? Why did you suddenly rush over like this? You're still talking about it. Lisanna raised her head and glared at Noah. Soon after, she seemed to have thought of something and her slender hands began to caress Noah's body. How are you? Are you hurt anywhere? Let me see. I'm not hurt. Noah hurriedly grabbed Lisanna's hand that was groping his body, knocked her on the head, and said in annoyance, Don't worry about it. Don't make a fuss. People who don't know will think that I went to fight with someone. Hearing Noah's words, not to mention Lisanna, everyone in the guild laughed bitterly. Didn't you go out to fight with someone? It's good that you're fine. Mira also walked out of the guild with a confused smile on her face. The guild has been destroyed. If even you, Noah, are injured, then we really don't know what to do. Mira is right. Alusha also came out and said with a serious expression. As long as you're fine, the guild can be rebuilt at any time. The guild leader's judgment is correct, so don't do anything rash in the future. Upon hearing this, Noah lifted his head, only to discover that the members of the guild had all come out of the guild with heavy expressions on their faces. Seeing the confusion on Myra's face, the worry on Lasana's face, Alusha's serious expression, and the solemn expressions of the guild members, Noah sighed inwardly. It seemed that the destruction of the guild didn't just affect him, but also his companions. Unlike the Phantom Lord, the members of Fairy Tale had a strong sense of belonging to the guild and treated it as their spiritual support. Now that their spiritual support was destroyed, it was easy to imagine how depressed they were. Everyone, don't look as if something has left you forever. Pull yourself together. Noah said loudly as he gently pushed Lisana away from his embrace. It's just a building. Although this building was built by the first president, even if it's destroyed, it doesn't mean that Fairy Tale is also destroyed. Everyone can just rebuild another one. Don't forget, we're Fairy Tale. If those bastards who destroyed our guild see us like this, they'll be so happy that they won't be able to speak. Noah's voice reverberated in the surroundings and entered everyone's ears. We should let those bastards see our strength, not our weakness. So, everyone, pull yourself together and rebuild Fairy Tale with me. Noah's words seemed to sweep away the darkness in everyone's hearts, causing them to feel a surge of hot blood. Oh! In the next moment, the cheers belonging to Fairy Tale once again resounded through the air. Seeing this scene, Noah suddenly smiled. Mira, Lisana, and Alusha all wore gentle expressions as they looked at Noah with pride in their hearts. Even Makarov, who was quietly watching from afar. Chapter 376. Compared to the Phantom Lord, the damage done to the Fairy Tale wasn't as severe. After all, the Phantom Lord had turned the entire guild into ruins, while the Fairy Tale was only damaged by Gadula's attack. It still looked like it was there, and it would not take long to repair it. However, in order to prevent the Fairy Tale from being destroyed by an unknown attack again, Noah suggested that the entire Fairy Tale be demolished and rebuilt. In fact, the Fairy Tale's guild building was considered very old among the many guilds in the Fiori Kingdom. In the Kingdom of Fiori, any guild with a bit of fame would build a grand guild building. It was necessary to show off one's status and reputation. No one would be willing to entrust a guild with a rundown guild building to complete, right? Therefore, for a guild, reputation was not only a matter of face, but also related to business. It was very important. However, in the past, the Fairy Tale had never paid attention to this point. For Fairy Tale, the problem of appearance was actually not that big of a deal. Everyone in the Kingdom of Fiori knew of Fairy Tale's power and strength. Under such circumstances, all the clients would come because of its reputation, so why would they care about the appearance of the shop? But now, this problem had to be brought up. A grand building had its advantages, and one of them was that it was not easy to damage. Therefore, Noah suggested to demolish and rebuild the guild building. Noah wasn't willing to let a guild that didn't include him be destroyed so easily. Therefore, in order to increase the guild's defense, Noah's suggestion was supported by everyone, including Makarov. Of course, Noah wanted to demolish and rebuild the guild not only to increase the guild's defense, but also to build a defense system for the guild. In the corner of the guild building that was demolished, Noah moved a building material in front of him to the side and shouted without turning his head. Next one. Coming. On the side, Naz, who was carrying a building material, immediately placed the building material in front of Noah and ran to move the next one. At this time, Noah began to work on the building material in front of him, gathering magic with his fingers. He drew a precise rune on the building material in front of him. These faintly discernible runes were like fireflies attached to the building material. Noah was carving the rune on the building material for the new guild building. This way, after using the building material carved with rune to build the new guild building, as long as he bought some magic crystals that could provide magic power, the runes carved in the new guild building could be used to defend against external enemies. It was for this purpose that Noah proposed to rebuild the guild building. If the original guild building was repaired, it could still carve runes. However, if the guild building was weak, the chances of the runes being damaged would be very high. This was why Noah came up with the idea of rebuilding the guild building. He wanted the guild building to be more resistant to damage, so as to not affect the runes. Beside Noah, the petite Lebby was holding a book. Wearing glasses, she was looking at the contents of the book while looking at the runes that Noah was carving. Not long after, she spoke with great surprise. This kind of language can't even be found in books. What kind of language is this? This is a very ancient language. I learned it in a very special place. Noah continued with the work at hand and answered without turning his head. In this world, there is no one else besides me who can recognize it. I didn't expect you to have such knowledge, Noah, Lebby asked curiously. This kind of language can be used as magic. Can you teach me? Noah was not surprised that Lebby would ask such a question. Lebby was a very studious girl. Her hobby was to read books. She had a certain preference for knowledge, and she had a very deep interest in language. Therefore, Lebby's magic was called three-dimensional language. It was a strange magic that could make the language itself three-dimensional and realize the meaning of the language before throwing it at the opponent. For example, if the opponent was attacked by the fire language that Lebby drew, it would be as if they were hit by a fireball and would be burned. This kind of magic was somewhat similar to rune magic. Therefore, it was not strange that Lebby would be interested in rune magic. Unfortunately, even if she was interested, Lebby could not learn rune magic. If you just want to learn the language, then I don't mind teaching you. But if you want to use it to use magic, then I'll have to disappoint you. Noah scratched his face with his free hand. If you want to use this kind of language to the effect of magic, you need a condition that is almost impossible for people in this world to achieve. Lebby can't do it. If you want to use magic, you need to be in contact with the magic base plate in the world of Night of the Magicians. Noah could use the world's active guidance to use magic no matter which world he was in, but others could not. Is that so? Lebby seemed to be a little disappointed, but she quickly pulled herself together. It's okay. Even if I can't use it as magic, I'm still very interested in this language. Teach me. Okay, I'll teach you when I have time. Noah did not refuse and directly agreed. If it's Lebby, you should be able to learn it quickly. That's great. Thank you. Lebby suddenly smiled happily. Seeing this scene, not far away, Jet and Troy who were helping to rebuild the guild looked unhappy. Why is Lebby in Noah's world again? Undoubtedly, Noah has Mira. Mira, who was delivering drinks to the guild members, seemed to have heard someone calling her. She turned her head and looked at Jet and Troy in confusion. What's wrong? No, nothing. Jet and Troy hurriedly waved their hands and shook their heads, but their eyes kept moving in the direction of Noah and Lebby who were chatting happily. The more they looked, the more they felt a surge of jealousy in their hearts. Although Jet and Troy liked Lebby, they were not unreasonable people who could not stand Lebby getting close to other men. However, when they saw Lebby getting close to Noah, Jet and Troy felt an inexplicable uneasiness. Intuition told Jet and Troy that there might not be anything wrong with Lebby getting close to other men, but if she were to get close to Noah, even if there was nothing wrong, it might develop into something. Was this a man's intuition? Amidst this joyous and comical atmosphere, the rebuilding of the guild continued to progress. Da-da-da-da. At this moment, a series of extremely orderly and loud footsteps could be heard from outside. The footsteps gradually drew the attention of all the members of Fairy Tale who were working. Everyone looked towards the sound, but the scene that entered their eyes made them all stunned. On the street outside, a group of fully armed soldiers holding spear-like staff-shaped weapons rushed towards the rebuilt Fairy Tale. They looked like a group of knights, but in reality, they had the sense of an orderly army. At the sight of this military-like team, not only were the people present, but even Noah was a little stunned. That's the council. The council. Everyone looked at each other in confusion. At this moment, the army stopped outside, and a strange person with a frog-like head walked out. I'm the messenger of the council. Without even greeting the members of Fairy Tale, or even looking at the confused Fairy Tale guild leader, Makarov, the man who claimed to be the representative of the Senate said those words. By order of the council, we are here to arrest the criminal Noah Doria. Chapter 377. On the orders of the council, we are here to arrest the criminal, Noah Dole. When these words echoed in the surroundings and drilled into everyone's ears, the whole place suddenly fell silent. Noah was startled at first, then he squinted his eyes and smiled inexplicably. Arrest Noah. Beside him, Lebby cried out in surprise. It wasn't just Lebby. Even Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others looked at Noah in surprise. Then, they looked at each other with worried expressions. The messenger of the council didn't seem to notice the reactions of the people present. He looked around and said to himself, Where is Fairy Tale's Noah Dole? I am the guild master of Fairy Tale. Makarov parted the crowd and walked out. He looked at the messenger of the council with an unprecedentedly serious expression. May I ask, why is the council arresting Noah, arresting my grandson? As soon as he said this, a gloomy laugh sounded. Let me tell you, Makarov. Along with this uncomfortable voice, a guy wearing a sorcerer's hat and dressed like a sorcerer walked out from the army outside with a sinister smile on his face, entering the eyes of everyone present. That is. With Alusha as the leader, the Fairy Tale's archmages were shocked. Makarov's face darkened, and the veins in his eyes bulged. He looked at the newcomer with anger. Joseph. Long time no see, Sir Makarov. Joseph sneered. But I'm sorry, I'm not here to catch up. How dare you appear in front of me? Makarov waved his hand as if he would attack at any time. His voice was like thunder, rumbling. How dare you appear in front of me after destroying my guild? Sir Makarov, you can't say such things. Joseph said with a smile. Undoubtedly, you are the ones who destroyed my guild. How can you accuse me so casually? Hearing Joseph's words, not to mention Makarov, even the members of Fairy Tale showed anger. This is something that everyone saw. Joseph spread his hands and looked around. After a while, he fixed his gaze on Noah, who was looking at them with a faint smile. A cold light flashed in his eyes. My guild was destroyed yesterday, and the members of my guild suffered great casualties. According to the people who woke up, Sir Makarov, the one who caused our guild to suffer such great losses is your dear grandson. Wah! This time, Makarov finally showed a shocked expression. Together with the other guild members, he looked at Noah. Yesterday, Noah did indeed go to the Phantom Lord, and the members of Fairy Tale knew about it. Originally, Makarov and the others thought that Noah was only there to find trouble. They didn't expect that Noah would destroy their guild as well. Direct conflicts between guilds are prohibited. Sir Makarov, as the guild leader, you should know about this, right? The representative of the council spoke at the right time. And your grandson, as a member of your guild, knowingly broke the law. We have the right to arrest him. The members of the fairy tale guild were all excited at the same time. If that's the case, that guy should be arrested too, right? Nez jumped out and pointed at Joseph, shouting loudly. That bastard also destroyed our guild. Look here. Look here. I destroyed your guild. Do you have evidence? Joseph smiled as if he had expected someone to bring this up. If you don't talk nonsense. We have many injured people here who testified that Mr. Noah destroyed our guild. Alusha and the others were furious. However, this was an unsolvable problem. When Gadula came to destroy Fairy Tale, it was at night, so no one saw him. On the other hand, when Noah went to the Phantom Lord, it was broad daylight. Many people had seen Noah's figure, and he couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried. Joseph probably relied on this point to take the initiative to complain to the council, right? How despicable. Alusha glared at Joseph, her eyes full of sternness. As a member of the 10 great saint magicians and the guild leader of a guild, you don't even dare to admit your own actions? I already said that you can't talk nonsense without evidence, Joseph replied unhurriedly. As long as you can produce evidence, I'll admit it. If not, Mr. Noah will have to go to jail today. Noah. Levi, who was the closest to Noah, couldn't help but worry. Brother Noah. Lisanna also came to Noah's side and tugged at the corner of Noah's clothes, her face full of anxiety. Noah. Mira couldn't help but call out softly, her face full of worry. Noah. Alusha, Lucy, Naz, Gray, Elfman, Kana, Hubby, and the others all looked in Noah's direction, not knowing what to say. Even Makarov closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and fell into silence. Presumably, no one would have thought that Joseph would be the first to complain and even lie through his teeth, right? Undoubtedly, only sorcerers with good moral conduct could be named as one of the 10 great saint magicians. Joseph's despicable actions didn't deserve the title at all. The council that gave Joseph the title of 10 great saint magicians must have had their eyes eaten by dogs. Noah Doria, the messenger from the council, spoke again. Please come with us. Before that, please allow me to ask a question. Noah gently patted Lisanna's hand, then walked out and came to Joseph with a smile. President Joseph, Phantom Lord, is considered a very powerful guild, right? It's a little strange to say that your guild is very powerful. Joseph looked straight at Noah, his eyes slowly narrowing. However, it's true that the sorcerers in the industry have given our guild a high evaluation. I've heard more than once that Phantom Lord has the ability to become the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. Noah glanced at Joseph with a half-smile. Then, Your Excellency, do you think that I, a brat who has no reputation in fairy tale, and isn't even an S-rank magic shooter, can destroy the existence of the strongest guild in broad daylight in front of the entire Phantom Lord and even bring about great casualties to this guild? You're Makarov's grandson. Who would look down on you? Joseph said with a fake smile. In fact, it's true that you destroyed our guild. Many people can testify to this. That's true. Noah shrugged and laughed inexplicably. Speaking of which, even I'm surprised. The so-called #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom is actually so weak that I can destroy it by myself. It really doesn't live up to its name. Joseph's smile froze. Compared to the Phantom Lord, our fairy tale is different, Noah said to himself. Not only did the enemy have the numbers of an entire army, but they also launched a sneak attack at night. Otherwise, our guild wouldn't have been destroyed like this. It seems that our guild is the #1 in the Fiori Kingdom. Nonsense. Joseph roared angrily. No one in your guild was there that night. Gadula destroyed it easily by himself. This sentence was like an echo, constantly lingering in everyone's ears. The moment this sentence was heard, Noah laughed, Makarov laughed, and everyone present laughed. Only Joseph's gloomy face darkened when he came to his senses. Chapter 378. A wicked person complaining first. Lying with his eyes wide open. Despicable villain. Shameless behavior. Indeed, Joseph, who had all the above conditions, could be called a real villain. He had the strength to rival the 10 great saint magicians, but his conduct was so despicable that it made people speechless. As the saying goes, a shameless person is invincible. Although Joseph's move was extremely despicable, it was very effective. If not for the fact that the target was Noah, perhaps someone in fairy tale would have been tricked by Joseph just like that. However, Joseph's behavior, in Noah's view, was simply childish to the extreme. During the 1 year in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah, because of establishing a relationship with Fairy Tale, had launched a variety of games with the plundered generation led by the celestial chrysanthemum prime under the background of politics. At that time, the various methods used by the important members led by the celestial chrysanthemum prime even caught Noah, who possessed superhuman strength, unprepared. He almost fell into one trap after another, simply unscrupulous. That was a truly superb method. With these important members as enemies, if Noah did not have a certain strength and relied on his strength to overcome the waves of danger when he first arrived in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah's reputation would have been ruined by those people who ate people without spitting out the bones. And Noah, who had withstood all these, gradually got used to these dangers and cultivated the vision and means to play games with those important members. Compared to those guys, Joseph's methods were simply easy to deal with. Noah had at least several methods to deal with him, but in the end, he used the simplest method to deal with him. This Joseph, not only was his methods and conduct despicable, even his temperament was so unbearable. Besides having strength, he had no other strong points. If Noah knew that Joseph let Gadjalu attack Fairy Tale in order to lure Makarov to make a move and plot against Makarov, then Noah would have a deeper understanding of Joseph's despicable actions. Unfortunately, there was no chance. A simple method of provocation, and Joseph self-destructed. Under the mocking gazes of the members of Fairy Tale, Joseph looked at Noah with an ugly expression, his eyes revealing an extremely obvious murderous intent. "You actually schemed against me. Not bad." Noah bluntly sneered. "I thought that with your despicable actions, you wouldn't be able to see through my open scheme." "Good. Good. Good." Joseph roared. Makarov really gave birth to a good grandson. Hearing this, Noah smiled but didn't say anything. By the way, to the outside world, Makarov had always claimed that Noah was his biological grandson. The identity of his adopted grandson was only known to the old members of Fairy Tale. That was why Joseph said that. Ahem. The council's emissary didn't seem to think that things would develop to this point. He quickly coughed and glanced at Joseph. "I'm sorry, President Joseph, but please come with us." "Arrest me?" Joseph was so angry that he laughed. "You mean that I have to be judged by the council with that kid?" "To be precise, only you, not me." Noah turned his head and looked at the council's emissary. "If you ask the residents of Magnolia, you will know that our guild was attacked the night before the destruction of the Phantom Lord." The council's emissary provoked the Phantom Lord first. "I was just retaliating." Hearing Noah's words, the sorcerers in Fairy Tale began to clamor. That's right, that's right. It was the Phantom Lord who provoked us first. They should be the ones to be arrested. We are the victims." Ahem. Makarov pretended to cough. His old face relaxed. "That's right, the council's emissary. The council will uphold justice for us, right? This. Of course. The council's emissary let out a few dry laughs. "We will uphold justice." As soon as he finished speaking, the military-like people waiting outside looked at each other and approached Joseph's direction. However, at this moment, Joseph suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with dark emotions. Boom! A gale of pitch-black mana carried with it an extremely dark and evil aura as it swirled around Joseph, making him look like a demon. Makarov, who was the first to react, turned pale with fright and shouted, "Be careful!" Almost at the same time, Joseph's angry roar sounded. "Go to hell!" Joseph raised his hands. The dark magic on his body flowed into his palms like the stinky sewage in a swamp and gathered in a whirlpool. Death storm. Without the slightest hesitation, Joseph gathered all the mana in his body into his most powerful attack, transforming it into a solid dark shockwave. As if projecting a pitch-black light wave, the shockwave pushed forward amidst the sharp sonic boom. Thus, the dark magic shockwave was like a cannonball. It rubbed against the atmosphere and caused the atmosphere to tremble slightly. It brought about a strong gust of wind and shot out violently. The target was Noah, who was closest to Joseph. In the next second, the pitch-black storm drowned Noah in the violent sound of the wind. "Noah!" The group of fairy tale members all cried out involuntarily. Mira and Lisanna felt their vision darken and almost fainted. "Ha ha ha ha!" Joseph's maniacal laughter reverberated. "Joseph!" Makarov's furious roar resounded in the sky above Fairy Tale. It was like thunder, lasting for a long time. However, the members of Fairy Tale were worried a little too early, and Joseph was happy a little too early. In the area covered by the dark storm, a dazzling white light suddenly spread out like a tide. It instantly covered the area where the dark storm was wreaking havoc. Pang! In the next instant, the pitch-black storm that was covered by the white light paused as if it had been neatly sliced apart. Amidst a deafening explosion, it shattered, exposing Noah, who was inside, to the sunlight once again. Joseph's maniacal laughter came to an abrupt end. "Noah!" Everyone, led by Mira and Lisanna, was overjoyed. Noah, however, slowly raised his head and looked at Joseph. The corner of his mouth slowly rose. "This way, I'll be the culprit who destroyed our guild. Even if I kill you, it'll only be in self-defense, right?" Hearing this, regardless of what the members of Fairy Tale and the members of the Senate were thinking, Joseph's eyes widened as he suddenly understood. It turned out that Noah had long predicted that he would launch a deadly sneak attack on him. He had been secretly on guard, but he didn't take any precautions. Instead, he purposely exposed an opening and waited for Joseph to make his move. This way, even if Noah attacked Joseph and even killed him, it would only be in self-defense. The emissaries of the Senate and the knights from the Senate had personally witnessed all of this. This was more useful than any evidence. That was to say, Joseph had always been trapped in Noah's scheme. Not only was he forced to self-destruct by a simple provocation, but now, he even handed over the power of life and death to Noah. However, in response to this, Joseph roared loudly. "Self-defense. Kill me. Are you saying that you want to kill me? Kill me, one of the 10 Saint Magi. You want me to kill you?" Noah sneered. "You think too highly of yourself." Saying this, Noah walked forward step by step. "President Joseph, I just happen to have a pet. Now, let it have a taste of the abilities of the number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom and one of the 10 Saint Magi." You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.